Hello and welcome to We Never Met, the podcast where I have interesting strangers on every single week. Today we have Taylor Kopp. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad you don't have a really complex name where I have to defer to you. My name is Kierkegaard, which is impossible to say. So
mine is easy as long as you don't have to spell it.
Yeah, that's true.
Because everybody says, you say K-O-P-P, and they say, oh, okay, C. And then you always see the C with the line making it a K, you know.
Yeah. Where I'm from in Wisconsin, in Milwaukee, we have Kopp's Ice Cream. It's there's a couple ice cream shops spelled the same way as your last name. So. Oh, really? Yeah. So I'm familiar.
Interesting.
With spelling.
Nice.
And you're a musician, an artist, songwriter, and I'm just curious to start out here. Was that something that you were always interested in? Because upon doing some research and looking you up, it looks like the solo work is more new. Mm-hmm. And so was this always a career path you were looking to go down, or a path you were going to go down, or is this sort of a thing that you just started recently?
Career would be a nice way to say it at this point, but
it is. I think so.
Music has always been a big part of my life. I've been playing music since I was a little kid. Started, piano lessons 8 or 9. Mm-hmm. Was a band kid. Played saxophone from 6th grade all the way through college. Started playing guitar in my early teenage years kind of thing. Sure. So it's always been, a part of my life. It's always been something I'm passionate about and I've taken seriously. At a certain point, I was actually a jazz studies major at the University of Oregon for a while. I wanted to be a jazz saxophone player. I ended up kind of walking away from that at one point.
Why did you end up walking away? It just didn't appeal to you?
I loved it, honestly. It was just, it's such an incredibly hard way to make a living.
I bet.
And also, frankly, I just don't think I was good enough. There was a certain point where I started to play with people that were better and better, which was awesome to be around. Yeah. But I just I don't think I really have what it takes to be a pro. I don't think I really have the discipline. So I ended up going a more quote unquote kind of practical direction there for a while. But yeah, so the solo stuff is pretty new. I mean, I've played in bands. I've kind of been a sideman. I've always played guitar and come up with, melodies and written chord progressions. The songwriting lyrical element didn't really start to develop for me until five years ago, maybe.
Okay.
Which is, into my 30s, so it was kind of a late development for me, but it's always been something I've been passionate about.
Yeah, because I noticed on your Instagram, you're a really great guitar player. I will say that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I noticed that sometimes you just sort of are just riffing and just playing, and there's no words necessarily with it. Is that basically from, I guess, learning instruments and playing more and not necessarily associating lyrics with what you're doing?
For sure. I mean, the instrumental part of my work has been there for much longer than the lyrical part of it. I've always just loved coming up with melodies, and a lot of times it kind of ended there,
Yeah. So I'm assuming when you were in bands and stuff, then were you not writing music as well, or how did that work?
When I was playing in bands, I was doing a lot of arranging.
Okay.
So I would contribute to developing the songs, developing the parts, but not writing the lyrics. The band that I was in for several years, there was another songwriter that was handling all the songwriting duties. He is a great songwriter. So that really wasn't my role. It was about coming up with musical parts, thinking about the piece of music as a whole, putting, so doing arranging. I was doing a lot of vocal harmony work. In that band, I was playing bass and banjo and guitar and singing harmonies and that sort of thing. So It wasn't until that kind of fizzled that I started to take songwriting a little more seriously.
Was that band a similar genre as you are in now? Or was it more of a folk style?
Yeah, it was a kind of an indie folk Americana band, veering more into the rock world. The songwriter kind of had a indie rock, almost punk background in previous bands he had been in. So there was that kind of punk aesthetic kind of rock element to it. But it was, it was folk instrumentation. It was mostly acoustic guitar lead, banjo, mandolin, violin, kind of an Americana setup.
You started talking about when that band like fizzled out. Was it immediate that you were like, I'm going to start trying to do solo stuff? Or I imagine that, as you said, like starting to songwrite later in life, that it might have been like scary to like just be like, I'm just going to go for this and start.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I think a lot of people that are in bands not as the lead often want to be the lead.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I want to be up there.
Right.
I wanted these to be my songs, but I didn't have the songs, you know?
Yeah, right.
And so when that band fizzled, I actually went a totally different direction. It was one of those moments in my life where kind of the practical reality overtook, and I was like, I went back to school.
Oh, wow.
I got a master's degree. I started a new career. I was still playing music, but I put it aside.
Sure.
But I was all the while playing a lot of guitar, still writing and fiddling and trying to kind of find my voice.
You released your debut album, Found, and that was more recent as well. Were those songs that you had been like tinkering with for a while? I know you stayed in a cabin in like Mount Hood to write some music, but was that the whole album that you created there, or what were these songs like from basically when you started songwriting till now?
For the most part, all of the songs on that record were of that specific time. The one exception is the song Old and Beautiful, which is the last track on the record, was one that I had like written a verse back in 2010.
Okay.
And had kind of sat on it, and then I finished it when I was writing all the songs for Found. But most of those songs were written in a period of about 2 years right before I went into the studio. They were new songs, but they were kind of a continuation of what I felt like was something I had been working on and trying to develop for a while.
Yeah, because it was interesting to me of like when you sort of totally pivoted and went to like get your master's and like it was when you started like working and sort of doing music on the side, like how did you transition or like decide to basically go from that and be like, no, I'm going to put more effort into music. I'm not going to like, was there a specific event that like triggered that, or was that just sort of something that organically happened as you played more and more by yourself?
Kind of both. Okay. I mean, I think I was starting to realize that I was developing a sound that felt like my own in a sense. And that happened over time. I was starting to write songs that I was finally like proud of lyrically, that I felt like I wanted to share with people. And I was working a full-time, stressful kind of corporate job at that time. So it was a constant struggle because I knew what I really wanted to do, but I wasn't sure what that looked like. You know, I wasn't sure how to take the plunge, if you will. One of the things that happened around that time was my brother passed away. My younger brother, he was about a year younger than me. And to be honest, that really shaped that next chapter for me. It kind of put things in perspective and made me realize that I wasn't really focusing on the things that I really truly cared about. Mm-hmm. So I think it was a process because it happened over time, but that event really shifted my whole way of thinking about the risks that I was willing to take in my life, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, because I mean, it can be, I'm very sorry to hear about your brother.
Thank you. Thanks.
And it can be really hard when you have something like so practical and it's like an everyday thing, and you're just like kind of, it's not terrible, but it's not great. And you're just sort of in that ground. It's hard to just like turn away from that and be like, I'm going to do this completely different thing that I don't know if it's going to work, but we'll just see. We'll go for it.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes something in your life needs to happen that really shakes you and makes you question everything. My brother, Noah, who passed, was a musician. He and I had a really strong musical bond more than anybody else in my life. Sure. He was a really talented guitarist and bass player. We had like played in bands in high school and stuff, but he was troubled, and he really struggled to like break through his own cycle of self-doubt and depression and darkness. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things for me was like realizing that he died before he was able to really do what he really wanted to do, you know? And that was real for me to recognize that and see the parallels in my own life.
Yeah.
And realize that I was really, all of a sudden I was more afraid of dying with regret than I was of failing or whatever else stops you from pursuing your dreams. So that was a big shift.
Yeah. And I feel like then when you transitioned and shifted towards that, were you very, I guess, persistent in like creating an album at first, or were you just sort of experimenting with music in general and just seeing how it worked? I feel like after that point, like having a debut album, like and turning it around that quickly is pretty impressive to me.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, like I said, it kind of coincided with when I was already, like I said, kind of finding my voice anyway.
Yeah.
So then it was like, it became so crystal clear to me. I have to make a record. That was it. I have to make a record. And I don't know, I've never made my own record. You know, I made an EP with a band I was in before, and I'd been in the studio a little bit, but you know, not only had I never made my own record, I'd never performed my own songs for anybody.
Sure.
I was in my kind of career mode at the time. So I kind of quickly just decided this is what I was going to do. I was getting paid pretty well. And so I was able to book studio time. By then I had a couple nice guitars, you know, I was kind of ready to go. I just needed to finish the songs. So that's when I went to the woods, got a cabin a couple times in the woods just to write. And I kind of put a bow on a lot of these songs that I had been working on over the past year or so. Some of them dealing with the grief and the loss, and some of them just kind of dealing with other life stuff and love stuff. I decided I needed to finish the songs first. My first 4-day trip into the woods, I finished 6 songs.
Oh, wow.
And I was I'll never forget that feeling. My cat's, the cat's saying hello. Yeah. She always likes to make her presence known here. That was an amazing feeling. You know, I went from, I have these songs, but I don't know if I can actually do it. And I don't know if I'm actually a songwriter, to coming back with 6 songs I was super proud of over the course of a couple days. And it was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to book studio time now.
Yeah.
I'm going to finish the rest of the songs. I recorded over the course of a winter, basically about 3 months. I went in about 5 or 6 times.
Writing some of the songs when you're not so isolated and you're like surrounded by people and things and distractions, and then finishing sort of when you are more isolated. Like what is the difference in like mindset for you when those two things are happening? Because I feel like, yeah, it's just 2 completely different environments. So I feel like it would be an interesting duality of like how your mind works in those 2 separate spaces. In
terms of like starting and finishing a song.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that benefited the continuity of those songs was that I was thinking and writing while I was like on camping trips and road trips or out in the woods.
Sure.
And so that imagery was already kind of there. I was doing a lot of deep thinking about my life. I kind of knew what these songs were about.
Yeah.
But the solitude of being by myself in the woods and saying, you can't leave, Taylor, until you finish some fucking songs was what I needed. And there's something about, for me, being in nature that brings a certain level of clarity and a version of myself that feels true and that I'm comfortable with. So kind of putting the final touches on those songs felt natural in that environment.
Do you think that's always been there for you, like the sort of connection with nature and like, or is that something more
definitely
recent? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of grew up that way. My dad was a really big influence on me when we were kids. When I was like 8 or 9, he bought a 75 VW pop top camper and we would go on week-long road trips, me and my brother and sister and my dad in this pop top, you know, Bob Dylan on the tape player and, you know, out in the middle of nowhere, Oregon, you know, Eastern Oregon. And that was kind of the beginning of it for me. I got into backpacking, and then that just kind of became what I did with my friends. You know, we went to the river, we'd go camping, you know, Portland, where you're close to, you know, you're an hour or two drive from really beautiful natural landscapes. So it's kind of always been part of me since I was a small child, a part of my family culture for sure, and something that I've kept up in my own life as an adult.
So you were born and raised in Oregon, and that's especially for being in Portland, that seems like more of a rarity.
A lot of transplants here for sure.
Yeah. What kept you here and kept you in the state as you grew into an adult?
I have a deep love for the Northwest and for Oregon. I've lived elsewhere. There was a couple of years after college where I was living overseas.
Okay.
I lived in China and Vietnam and a couple places for a couple of years in my early 20s. I love those experiences for sure. Every time I came back to the Northwest, though, it just felt like home. My family is here. I'm close with my family, my parents, my siblings. We're all, for almost all of us, are in the Portland area or in the Northwest. So a true home base here for sure. You know, we talk often about living overseas again or, you know, going elsewhere, but it's just always felt like home.
Do you have do you have kids and stuff as well?
I don't. My wife is actually pregnant with our first child right now. Thank you. So life's about to change for sure.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, is it tough? Because I've talked to musicians and artists before. Was it a tough decision for you, even with all the clarity that you received, like when you decided to sort of quit and pursue music, that there was like basically some sort of burden on you, like I have to make some sort of money out of this because I have a family?
Yeah, it was tough. It still is tough. I mean, I would say, you know, my wife and my whole family have always been super supportive of my music. My wife, you know, is a huge part of my process. She hears my songs when they're in the work. She's a fan, you know, like she's seen over the years how much I need music to be happy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a lot different when you have to say, hey, I'm not going to be able to make any money for a little while. Yeah. You know, like we got a mortgage, or, you know, sure. we met in grad school. We have crazy student loans we got to deal with. And so, you know, it's a constant battle. I think at a certain point, I don't know if convince is the right word, but I was able to show that this just needs to happen. Like I need to be able to pursue this in a way that's bigger than what I've been doing so far. Last year in November, I quit my corporate job, and the plan was to release the record and spend the year touring and building up my audience. Yeah. Well, we all know how that worked out. I mean, the timing didn't exactly nail the timing there, you know? So that has changed things. So honestly, it's a daily part of our conversations is how do we balance this? How do we do this? You know, how do I selfishly do this thing that I need to feel whole and also make sure we're taking care of our needs, you know? So I'm still trying to figure it out. You know, I haven't really had to or been able to do as much touring as I had planned to. Sure. So that part is still TBD as far as how we're going to figure that out. But, you know, we're talking about it now. What am I going to, you know, this year didn't work out as we had planned, you know?
So is there a plan? I'm sure obviously once, I mean, no one can really figure out when this is going to end, but whenever it does, to go out and tour and stuff on that, on your album. Yeah,
that's the hope for sure. You know, now we are expecting a baby.
Yeah.
So that changes things a little bit. And I'm hoping to start working on a second record.
Oh, wow.
Here pretty soon. I have a bunch of, once again, half-finished songs that I just need to probably find a cabin in the woods to finish. Yeah, still trying to figure out, but the hope is certainly to get out in the world and play these songs for people. I mean, I miss playing live. I haven't been able to do it as much as I wanted. I really want to put a band together. Yeah. Like I envision my next record to be a little bit more of a full band kind of situation. We'll see if I'm able to pull that off. For the listeners that don't know, the record that I put out is pretty stripped down. There's no drums, there's no bass. Mm-hmm. It's mostly acoustic guitar and voice, but I play every instrument, every note on the record, from a little piano, a little saxophone, a little vibraphone, mostly acoustic guitar and vocals, and then harmony vocals. So the hope is when the world gets back to whatever it was doing before, that I can build a band and get out on the road. But yeah, I don't really know what that's going to look like yet, and it's becoming harder and harder for musicians to make a living these days.
Music for you, we sort of talked about, like, you started out and really played jazz for a really long time and studied jazz. And even when you were working a full-time job and doing something else that wasn't necessarily creating music, you still were. So what do you think it is, like, about, and you even alluded to, like, it helps you, or, is a part of, like, your happiness as well. What do you think it is about, like, creating or even playing or being a part of that world that it, like, connects with you so much and on such a grand scale? Like, what is it about music?
It's a way for me to process my thoughts, whether they end up being shared or not. I was working on a new song the other day, and I was playing it a little bit for my wife, and it was kind of sad. I tend to veer into the melancholy for sure.
Sure.
And she was just saying, like, doesn't it make you more sad when you write this stuff?
That's a good question, though.
Which is a good, fair question. And the answer is no. It makes me feel better, because I was going to have the thoughts anyway. Sure. And it's just a way to process them. It's a way for me to put them on paper, or put them into a melody, or put them into some words that helps me realize what it is that I'm thinking. There's something really powerful about trying to put structure to your thoughts, because it helps you understand what you were thinking. Thought doesn't necessarily equate to meaning. You have to take the next step to make thought become something that's meaningful to you.
Sure.
So for me, I've always felt happier when I'm creating and when I'm making music. The tricky flip side to that is when I'm not, I have a hard time staying happy. It's just like, this pandemic has been tough because I don't feel very inspired.
Sure.
I'm in my house all the time. I'm not working, I'm not out playing music for people. So I don't have some of the outlets feel missing. So it's been critical to my happiness, I think, whether I was taking it seriously and putting songs together, or just playing my guitar for 20 minutes before I go to bed.
Yeah. I mean, it's true that they say, even if you don't write music, if you just write down your thoughts, it's helpful to sort of work through what you're thinking. And
definitely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it makes a lot of sense. And yeah, because I think, similar to your wife's thought, I feel like if I wrote songs that were sad about my sad experience, I feel like I would be more sad, because I don't know. I don't think I could process it that way. Maybe I'd cry a lot on stage or something.
Yeah. That can be part of the process too. I think one of the things that I've recognized about my own art is that I tend to create something to be hopeful about. So it may start as a song that feels pretty sad, or it's about grief or something dark. And then through the process, I put it in context of something that somehow makes me feel a little bit better about it. So I think that's kind of my own natural tendency as kind of an optimist, to say, here's this dark thing, like, what about it makes me feel better in some little way.
Yeah, I think that probably says more about me, about, like, I would write a song where it's sad and also there's no resolution. It's just sad the whole way through.
Hey man, and if you did that, more power to you. Like, that's what's so beautiful about art and about music is, they may not come to the same conclusion that I do, but that says something about the creator. Whether it's like neat and tidy is not the point. The point is that it's true.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, like, playing, I know you haven't gotten the chance to play a lot live, but, like, seeing songs that you write, like, connect with people, or even having people message you about your music that you post, has to be like super powerful to see other people react to something that you also are feeling.
It is. I mean, it has been a really powerful part of my year. It didn't go how I planned, but people reach out to me on social media or whatever and say, or through email and say, I heard your song. And, like people have reached out to me about family members that have passed or about, hard parts in their life where they felt stuck. And my song somehow has made them feel a little bit better or help to, realize what matters or formulate a plan or something. I mean, that's kind of priceless. It's really powerful. And it reminds me why art is important.
Yeah.
So it's been really cool. I have been able to connect with people online, and I'll take it. It's been really cool.
Yeah. Cause it's interesting. I'm a very big, like listener, and then I'll look up the lyrics and then I'll sort of like see what I think it means and things like that. But then there's also the flip side of that where I can just listen to a song and maybe not even consciously comprehend the lyrics, but it makes you feel a certain way anyways, even if you aren't necessarily listening to every single word that they're saying, just based on the song structure and everything. And
Absolutely.
I think when I listen to your music, I think that's why I wanted to have you on so bad. Cause I'm like, I feel like it just connected with me, even though I didn't go to like Lyric Genius and look up all the lyrics of the songs, which I think is awesome.
Well, that's part of the beauty of it. I mean, it almost, plenty of other artists have said this, it almost doesn't matter what it means to me, because it takes on a new life when someone else listens to it. And I know that I'm guilty of this too, guilty is the wrong word, but I'll listen to another song and I'll latch onto one line. And that line is all that will matter to me in that song. And it makes me feel something, even though that line out of context or in context with the rest of the song isn't exactly like, I'm not exactly nailing the meaning, but
sure, it
almost doesn't matter. Right. It takes on a meaning of its own. I've been listening to this Mountain Goat song this year. Do you know that song?
No.
It's kind of been hitting a lot of playlists this year because the line is, I'm going to make it through this year if it kills me.
Okay, sure.
And it's like, what a perfect 2020
right
song. But you take it out of context, it doesn't exactly make sense, but that doesn't mean that it's any less powerful as a line in a song, so it's been fun. And one of those balances you take, you don't want to tell exactly what it's about because you kind of don't want to take the magic out of it for the listener.
I was going to ask, like, when you're actually writing music, is that also because maybe this is just me thinking about how I'd write a song, but like when you are writing about something specific that's happened to you, do you try to broaden it a little bit for a song to make it, I guess, more accessible to other people, or does that even matter?
There are songs that have started as almost like a diary entry where I'm writing about my own life. And then as I've started to write them, it's felt more meaningful and more powerful to broaden it, to step back from the character, maybe to make it a little bit more fictional. I think it was Justin Townes Earl who said, "Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story."
Okay, sure.
Something like that. Yeah. So, as a songwriter, that's always an option, I guess, but you just want to make sure it feels authentic. There are certain songs where it wouldn't make sense for me to even try to make it make sense for someone else. The song on my record, A Dream I Had, is a conversation that I had in a dream with my dead brother. It's like, it doesn't make any artistic sense for me to broaden that because the song existed in a moment, in a dream. But there are times when, whether it's you want it to sound good, you want it to flow right, you want it to rhyme.
Sure.
You want it to work for the song where you maybe, or at least I make an effort to make it more universal, but it kind of just depends. I think I love so many songs that are super personal to the artist and don't make sense on paper. I still can find a lot of value in that. And there are songs where exactly what it's about and you still love it. So I think there's room for experimentation for sure.
So with the new album that you're creating and like the songs you're creating for that, Is there a broad sort of story arc of that album, or is it more songs that you, not that are disjointed, but aren't necessarily related to each other? Is there a theme, I guess,
for the new stuff I'm working on?
Yeah.
I'm not really sure yet. I think that, I mean, I have way more than an album worth of partial songs started. So
sure.
The hope, I always like an album that feels like an album instead of a compilation.
Yeah.
The hope for me as an artist is always to make an album that feels like the songs fit together, but I don't feel any pressure to make a concept album necessarily. I mean, Found in a way was kind of a record that felt like it was all one piece. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure what this one's going to end up being exactly. I'm writing, because it's just a lot about making sense of my life as I've tried to focus more on the things I love, mm-hmm. trying to make sense still of grief.
Sure.
5 years since the death of my brother, all of that stuff is, I'm writing about all of it. So I'm not really sure what's going to come together when, when all is said and done, but I hope that it feels,
cohesive. Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of albums, do you know what I'm just curious about this because I was thinking about this yesterday when I was listening to an album. Do you know what the last album you listened to like all the way through was? Do you do that often? I feel like in our society today, it's like people just listen to singles and there's not a lot of album.
Yeah, I'm a little old school in that sense. I've always loved a full record.
Yeah.
And so I still consume music mostly that way, even though I know that most people don't. I listen to playlists too, and
sure,
I'll let Spotify take over if I don't want to decide what to play. But I listen to vinyl records and still every day, and I listen to records through all the time.
Sure.
What was your question? The last one that I actually listened to all the way through?
Yeah.
I've been really into this Christian Lee Hudson. Do you know who he is?
No, but I should look him up.
Hudson, Hutson. He put out a record this year. I've been really, really into it. I actually just wrote a top 10 records of the year list for another publication that did a review of my record. They asked me to do it. So that's kind of fresh in my mind. So I've been listening to a lot of my favorite records from 2010.
Sure.
I listened to that record all the way through yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I probably, honestly, I know I'm in the minority here. I probably listen to a record all the way through every day or every couple of days. Sometimes multiples in a day, just because that's how I like to do it. I think the artist intended it to be that way. Things are changing a little bit. It's turning into a singles world for sure. And so I think artists are starting to change the way they put stuff out, but I guess I'm a little old school in that way.
Yeah. No, I was just curious because I felt like it was a while since I listened to an album all the way through, and I was listening to an album all the way through yesterday, and I was like, I don't do this much. I should do this more probably.
Put on that Christian Lee Hudson album, play it all the way through. That's a really good one. A couple other albums since I have been thinking about my top 10 list. I really love the Bonnie Light Horseman album. I don't know if you know Bonnie Light Horseman, kind of a folk super group that came out this year with a record. It's so good.
Oh, awesome.
And then Waxahachie put out a record this year that's just really good. So
there you go.
Those are kind of, there's some records for you.
Yeah. Because I was listening to, do you know who Novo Amor is?
I'm not sure. It doesn't ring a bell.
Yeah, he's a Wales artist, but he has a new album out that's really, really good. And something that's cool, if you want to do this for your vinyls in the future, I thought it was a really cool concept.
Yeah.
I have his vinyl back there, but for each vinyl pressing, they use recycled plastic pellets. So every single vinyl that exists of his is different. The color, it's just super cool. So you don't know what you're going to get.
That's really cool. Yeah, I've seen, because I pressed my record on vinyl and I worked with a pressing plant here just outside of Portland, and I got to go in a couple times and see their process. But yeah, they use these little pellets, these little plastic pellets, and they kind of melt them down, I guess.
Yeah.
I wasn't quite too familiar with the process, but that's really cool. So are they kind of like spotted almost? Do they look like?
Yeah, I got mine's like hot pink. So, really? But yeah, there's all different ones. There's like different textures in it, but yeah, all different colors, all different like fades of colors and stuff. It's cool. It's all unique, every single one of them.
That's really cool. I should check it out. Novo Amor.
Yeah, it's NOVO and then AMOR. Yeah,
nice.
But yeah, he's got a good new album out. But so I also wanted to ask, the pandemic has certainly made everything uncertain, and who knows? But do you have like an idea of when you're gonna like? Is it going to be a year and a half? Like how long in the future to like release new music or anything like that?
It is very hard to say.
Yeah.
My goal is to release new music in 2021, whether that's a full length record, which is my hope. My hope and dream is to release another record in 2021. It's like I said, it's been less than ideal this year.
Yeah.
My hope is just to kind of make sure people don't forget me and that I can put out a second record that will open people's eyes to the first one still that haven't heard it. Cause it's found some people online, but I definitely want more people to hear it than have. So, you kind of got to stay front of mind these days with the way people consume music.
Right.
But we'll see if I'm able to pull it off. My hope is to have most of the songs finished in terms of writing in the next couple months, and then got to figure out how to get in the studio. And honestly, the trickiest part is trying to build a band in this, because you can't really just have people over to your house. And so do I do another solo record, or do I try to work remote with some artists? Or I'm not exactly sure, but yeah, look for new music in 2021 for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Where can people find more about your music and your social media and stuff like that?
Probably the best place is my Instagram, at Taylor Kopp Music. That's where I'm most active, but I have Facebook. I'm on Twitter, all at Taylor Kopp Music. I have a website, taylorkopp.com, that has some information. So those are the best ways to keep in touch. I'm posting music on Instagram a lot, just stuff I'm playing, like you said, like whether it's an instrumental or a cover, or recordings of some of my songs. I would say very approachable. So I love people to reach out and chat with me online. So that's always an option too.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. You're awesome to talk to, and thank you so much for taking the time. I really love the album and the music, and that's the reason why I wanted to have you on. So
thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sam. It was cool. It's my first podcast interview, so really happy to be a part of it, and thanks for thinking of me.
Yeah, of course. And by the time this will come out in early 2021, so maybe there'll be something soon on the horizon. Who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows? All right, thanks.
All right, thank you, Sam.